Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class, which is from Canto 2, the Cosmic Manifestation. Chapter 10, Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And this morning we're doing text 9. Without further ado, we'll start the class. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadari, Yashodanandana Pradhana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Pradhana Ranjana, Jamunatira Vanachari, Jamunatira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadari, Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Giradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giradhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya Sto Terasati Sishimaris Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya Sto Terasati Sishimaris Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय इस्कॉन फाउंडर श्री प्रभुपाद इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय नावद्वीप मायापुराम की जय पुरुषोत्तम जगन्नाथ पुरी धाम की जय गंगा मई की जय जमुना मई की जय तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय श्याम वेद भक्त वृंद की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Krishna Prabhupada Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swaminiti Namane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Siddhatmane Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Namane Narayana Namaskritya Narom Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udidayat Nashta Prayesva Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamastuke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 9. Ekam ekatarābhāve yadā nopalabhāmahe tritayaṁ tatra veda sa ātmā svāśrayāśrayaḥ ekam ekatarābhāve yadā nopalabhāmahe tritayaṁ tatra veda sa ātmā svāśrayāśrayaḥ. Ekam ekatarābhāve yadā nopalabhāmahe. Tritayaṁ tatra veda sa ātmā svāśrayāśrayaḥ. Hare Krishna. Please chant.
एकम् ekatarābhāve yadā nopalabhāmahe tritayaṁ tatra yo veda sa ātmā svāśrayāśrayaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare
From
Krishna.
ekatarābhāve yadā nopalabhāmahe tritayaṁ tatra veda sa ātmā svāśrayāśrayaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Damana.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Ekam ekatarābhāve yadā nopalabhāmahe tritayaṁ tatra yo veda sa ātmā svāśrayāśrayaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? All right, we'll do word for word. Ekam, one. Ekatarābhāve, another. Abhāve, in the absence of. Yadā, because. Na, does not. Nopalabhāmahe, perceptible. Tritayaṁ, in three stages. Tatra, there. Ya, the one. Veda, who knows. Sa, he. Ātmā, the supersoul. Swa, own. Ashraya, shelter. Ashraya, of the shelter. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All three of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. Report by Srila Prabhupada. There are innumerable living entities, one dependent on the other in the relationship of the controlled and the controller. But without the medium of perception, no one can know or understand who is the controlled and who is the controller. For example, the sun controls the power of our vision. We can see the sun because the sun has its body, and the sunlight is useful only because we have eyes. Without our having eyes, the sunlight is useless. And without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus, they are interdependent, and none of them is independent. Therefore, the natural question arises concerning who made them interdependent. The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be ultimately completely independent. As stated in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the ultimate source of all interdependent objectives is the complete independent subject. This ultimate source of all interdependence is the Supreme Truth, or Paramatma, the Supersoul, who is not dependent on anything else. He is svāśrayāśrayaḥ. He is only dependent on himself, and thus he is the supreme shelter of everything. Although Paramatma and Brahman are subordinate to Bhagavan, because Bhagavan is Purushottama, or the supreme person, he is the source of the Supersoul also. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 18, Lord Krishna says that he is the Purushottama and the source of everything. And thus it is concluded that Sri Krishna is the ultimate source and shelter of all entities, including the Supersoul and Supreme Brahman. Even accepting that there is no difference between the Supersoul and the individual soul, the individual soul is dependent on the Supersoul for being liberated from the illusion of material energy. The individual is under the clutches of illusory energy, and therefore, although qualitatively one with the Supersoul, he is under the illusion of identifying himself with matter. And to get out of this illusory conception of factual life, the individual soul has to depend on the Supersoul to be recognized as one with him. In that sense, also, the Supersoul is the supreme shelter, and there is no doubt about it. The individual living entity, the jiva, is always dependent on the Supersoul, Paramatma, because the individual soul forgets his spiritual identity, whereas the Supersoul, Paramatma, does not forget his transcendental position. In the Bhagavad Gita, these separate positions of the Jiva Atma and the Paramatma are specifically mentioned. In the 4th chapter, Arjuna, the Jiva soul, is represented as forgetful of his many, many previous births. But the Lord, the Supersoul, is not forgetful. The Lord even remembers when he taught the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god some billions of years before. The Lord can remember such millions and billions of years, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 26, as follows. Vedaham samatitani vatamani vatamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu veda nakaschana. The Lord is eternal, blissful body of knowledge, is fully aware of all that happened in the past, that which is going on at the present, and also what will happen in the future. But in spite of his being the shelter of both the Paramatma and the Brahman, persons with a poor fund of knowledge are unable to understand him as he is. The propaganda of the identity of cosmic consciousness with the consciousness of the individual living entities is completely misleading, because even such a person or individual soul as Arjuna could not remember his past deeds, although he is always with the Lord. And what can a tiny ordinary man, falsely claiming to be one with the cosmic consciousness, know about his past, present, and future? Oma ginati virandasya jnana ganashalakaya chakshu militam jena tasmai Shri Guruve namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Peshtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshacharini. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gurati Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Jai. So the English translation again. All three of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter, is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. So, Hare Krishna. Sukadeva Goswami is explaining very nicely. He said the three stages of beings. So we have to know what they are clearly. It was in the previous text. So if you were here yesterday, you got to hear about it. But for purposes of jarring our minds, we will repeat it. So this is just from the text before, text 8, Canto 2, Chapter 9, text 8. The 3 stages. Here they are. An individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyatmic person. It's our senses that run our lives pretty much. We're controlled by senses. The things that we do, we use the senses to do them. Seeing, touching, hearing, tasting, and so on. So the individual person is the adhyatmic person. Ātmā is the soul. The individual controlling deity of the senses is called adhidevi. So yesterday, it was explained that all of our senses have a controlling deity, controlling demigod. Demigod, we know that they control weather, but many people don't realize that they control the senses too. Yes, they have been given control over that. So when the senses don't work, there's a particular demigod responsible for getting it to work or not work. The individual controlling deity, that's the adhidevic. Then the embodiment, to read it directly, the embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the adhibhotic person. Now, adhibhotic, when we talk about that, the way it was explained with the different challenges or the kleshas, adhibhotic was described as the other living entities. So the embodiments seen on the eyeballs, the eyes look at other things. Unless the eyes does not see oneself, unless there's a mirror in front of us, we can't even see ourselves. But the individual person, that's on the adhyatmic section anyway. Everything else, adhibhotic. And the devas, the demigods that control the senses, adhidevic. So there's interdependence. This is the way they've been made. All of them relate to each other one way or the other. And Srila Prabhupada used the power of vision, the sun. So the sun as an entity would be under the adhibhotic, what's seen in the eyeballs. The individual is the adhyatmic person. Now, so the sun supplies sunlight and we get to see. We see with our eyes, and there's a controlling deity for the eyes, and there's a controlling deity for the sun too. So the sun comes out, everything becomes visible. When the sun is on the other side where we are at, it's not shining, then it's dark, then we can't see anything. We have, from science, produced a light bulb, but its brightness is nowhere near what the sun can give. And it doesn't go that far either. But when the sun comes out, you can see for miles, and everything is very, very, very clear. So the sun makes it possible for the eyes to work. Without the sun, then the eyes they really won't work that well, because even if they are functional, if we're in the darkness, then the actual activity of the eyes becomes limited or almost non-existent. In other words, you can open your eyes in the dark, but you still won't see anything. Or if you see anything at all, the pupils dilate a little bit. It's very, very limited vision. Nothing like when the sun is out. So there's dependence, like the interdependence. The sun comes out, we can see. Without the sun, we cannot see. And then the eyes become useless. This is how Srila Prabhupada is explaining it. So the object, the sense, and the demigod. Those three. Now, Then Srila Prabhupada talked about the interdependence, how that came about. Who made them interdependent? Well, there has to be a controlling, overall controller that has made all of these three, ātmik, bhautik, and devic, interdependent. And clearly, the personality that made them interdependent cannot be subservient to any of them, cannot depend on any of them. So it caused the reason that the personality who made them interdependent is him or herself a complete independent being. And that's the argument that Srila Prabhupada is putting out in the purport. And he points to the Supersoul, Paramatma. The Paramatma is not dependent on anything else. He is svāśrayāśrayaḥ, shelter of the shelter, the ultimate shelter. So our individual being, our senses, and the demigods all depend on the Supreme Independent, or the Paramatma. Now, Paramatma is also subordinate. Paramatma and Brahman are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. That would be Krishna. So the Krishna is the most supreme independent. And his expansions are I'm getting a little bit of interference here. Yeah, okay. Okay, sorry about that. So Krishna is the supreme. Nobody's at his level. And the expansions of Krishna, his effulgence, and the Supersoul, who is present in the heart of all living entities, and also from non-living entities in every single atom. He's everywhere. The Lord is everywhere because the Supersoul is everywhere, and is an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Supersoul is the Supreme Independent, attached to or controller of these three, the ātmik, the bhautik, and the devic, all three. That's from the Supersoul. So we basically, in the Krishna consciousness, we are directed by the Supersoul. The Supersoul is actually Anumanta Upadrishya. He supervises and he also permits. All our activities cannot be done, even with the senses, without the permission of the Supersoul. For every activity, the reasoning for the activity, in other words, if somebody wants to do something, the mind gets to know, then the senses begin to act. But the senses cannot act unless they are permitted by the supreme shelter of the shelter, which is who is the Supersoul. So everything that we do is permitted by the Supersoul, good or bad, in the material world. And if you ask Srila Prabhupada, he'll tell you, yes, the material world, we categorize some things as good and some things are bad. But from the overall spiritual point of view, everything in the material world is bad. It's designed to fall apart. There is no permanence here. And impermanence, when we have impermanence, then anybody that puts all their marbles, in the way of speaking in American language, put all of their hopes in something that's not permanent, is going to get disappointed at some point. And that alone is cause to tell or to conclude that the material world is bad. It's not good for us. Yehi samspasa jabuka, duka yunaya evate. Adyanta vanta konteya, nati shuramate buddha. The one that is intelligent, he knows that things in the material energy are temporary. They have a beginning, they have an end. In the spiritual world, there is no end to anything. There's a beginning, there's an end in the material world. So the intelligent person, the wise person, does not delight in collecting things that are going to be temporary. This is why Lord Chaitanya has given us so much mercy by saying, chant the holy name of the Lord, serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, think of Krishna, understand your position, and I should understand my position as an individual soul, dependent on the super soul. Then we will get access after this body to what is permanent. So to get out of this illusory conception of this life, the individual soul depends on the super soul because the super soul is a shelter of the senses, the demigods themselves that control the senses, and those of us that are using the senses. They're all controlled by the super soul. So, Sri Prabhupada says, the individual living entity is always dependent on the super soul. We are forgetting our spiritual identity. The overwhelming majority of people in the world are in such a sorry state. One, they don't know who they are. Many people don't even know they're the soul. They really think they are the bodies. And we have to use the body for a while because after all, when the body is younger, it's more effective in doing work. Not even understanding that work is also another form of incarceration. It's a lifestyle of those who are incarcerated, hard work. But people have accepted it as normal because you have to work hard before money comes, and money, then it comes and then it goes because we have bills to pay. But then if we satisfy those bills, then we get to get some semblance of peace, while at the same time, the body gets sick and the body continues to get old. Every time the person celebrates his or her birthday, they've gotten 1 year older. The body has become weaker. It is not difficult to figure that out. Everybody listening to my voice now is an adult. But 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, depending on your age, if you were like 5 years old, you were like 6, you see 5, 6, 7-year-olds now. They hardly walk, they run. When they get an opportunity to have another friend they want to play with, they immediately start running. Now ask yourself, at 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, can you run at the rate in which those 5-year-olds can run? Can you? They'll have to carry you after 10 minutes in a stretcher to take you to the hospital if you continue. You can't. You simply can't. But they can do it at that age. And then as they get older, you get to the teenage, immediately that 5-year-old can run longer than you. So the body is getting old. It doesn't have to be 50 years old, but just for the fact that you can't move it the way you were when we were 5, 6, 7 years old already tells us the body has slowed down. It's slowed down. Another example on the tracks, athletics, those who like to run. We're talking about adults in their 20s or whatever, late teens, 20s, mid-20s, running track. When they finish, you can look at them. Some of them are just passed out. They are just breathing heavily, leaning over, sitting on the tracks. But if you have a 5, 6, 7-year-old run that same distance of 100 meters, when they finish, they'll just be walking around and nothing happened. They won't fall down and try to catch your breath. No. So the body breaks down as much quicker than people realize. This life is short. It's very short. Kali Yuga is the shortest. So we take advantage of the knowledge that we're getting, knowing who we are and who the Paramatma is and the Paramatma's position. And then that knowledge, the more we understand it, the more we will move closer and closer and closer to the goal. The goal is Krishna and Krishna consciousness. We are forgetful. This is now the mind. Srila Prabhupada we talked about the body, now the mind, the subtle part. We tend to be forgetful of previous births. Practically everybody here, if you ask them to give an account of their daily activities when between the time they were 1 year old to the time they got 2 years old, nobody can get it right. Not a single person, me included. Nobody remembers, but we've lived it. So it's like that. The Diva soul is forgetful, but the super soul is never forgetful. The Lord remembered, and he told Arjuna, I have been with you in the Battle of Kurukshetra. He explained. When Arjuna asked, but at your age, how could you have explained the Shastra to the sun god? Then Krishna says, we have taken births millions of times. You've forgotten that, and you've forgotten what you did. But I remember every one of them. Krishna can remember what happened to everybody yesterday at 1:29 in the afternoon. Between 1:29 and 1:30 in the afternoon. You pick whatever whatever time. EST, IST, whatever. Because he can tell you every single person what they were doing. He is the Supreme Soul. The Super Soul can do that. But we wouldn't even remember between 1:29 and 1:30 what we were doing. Many of us won't. So Krishna can remember a Super Soul as a Super Soul millions and billions of years. And that's why Srila Prabhupada quoted Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute. That's the title. Text 26, Vedaham Samajitani, Vachmanani Chajuna, Bhavishanti Chabhutani, Mamtu Veda Kaschana. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that's happened in the past, everything that's happening now in the present, and everything that's supposed to happen in the future. I also know all living entities, but me, no one knows. And no one really can know Krishna fully because it's not possible to know Krishna fully. You can know his position, that he's a Supreme Personality, but you cannot know him fully because he's unlimited. Everything about him is unlimited. He has multifarious energies, and each one of them is unlimited. That's Krishna. Prabhupada sometimes he explains and he says, that is Krishna. So he's aware of everything that's going on, everything that went on in the past, and everything that's going to happen in the future. So sometimes we worry about, or we think about our own future, but the Lord knows what our future is going to be. All we have to do is to submit to him. And when we submit or surrender to him, since he knows the future, he can carve the future the way in which it would be beneficial in our lives, in our Krishna conscious life, not our material life. Material life is not important. They are only necessary. Not only is material life necessary, they're necessary because we have these bodies, but they're also temporary because the bodies will be leaving us soon. Everybody's life is short because 100 years is short. Compared to Lord Brahma's 1 second, Lord Brahma's 1 second is calculated in our years to be 100,000. 100,000 years is Lord Brahma's 1 second, and we will live for 100 years. 1/10,000th of a second of Lord Brahma, and we already, our lives are gone. So we should never take things here in the material world as important. Anyone who thinks things that they have to do material is important is deceiving themselves. They are an illusion. They are only necessary. And if you put it in the category of necessary, then Brahma Bhuta Prasannaatma Nasochati Kangshati. Then it begins to apply to you. It's only necessary. Sometimes it's unnecessary. And Brahma Bhuta Prasannaatma, that person who is like that, they don't lament, they don't hanker for anything because it's temporary. All you have to do is tell the mind it's temporary. I can do without it. If it comes, fine. If it doesn't come, fine. That should be the mood that everybody should have. But at the same time, we should put Krishna the topmost in all the things that we figure out in our lives. Think about Krishna all the time, so that when the mind tries to go to somewhere that is just for sense gratification, we pull it away and bring it to Krishna. The activity can be done, but it should be done in Krishna consciousness. Just like in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, there was Arjuna. He had a bow and arrows. There was Duryodhana. He had a bow and arrows. But Krishna had already schooled Arjuna in what to do. So Arjuna was fighting, not because he wanted to. He already said the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita that he didn't want to fight. But he started fighting because Krishna wanted him to. That's the lesson for us. Material world is only necessary, not important, but while we're here, take whatever that is here that we can use to serve Krishna and serve Krishna, because our real happiness comes from pleasing Krishna's senses. Guru will tell you that. We serve Guru as practice for serving Krishna because he's a representative of Krishna. Guru is a representative of Krishna. And we don't have eyes to see the transcendental spiritual Krishna, not with these eyes. So he has given us Guru so that we can practice how to serve Krishna by serving Guru. And also because we were wayward and troublesome in the spiritual world, trying to be boss when in fact we didn't deserve that place of being the controller. Now Guru also acts as one where to whom we learn how to be humble. And by that, the Guru, the way we go about it is what Guru tells us to do, we obey and we do it. And so Krishna consciousness is not for the kind of person who says, I'm independent, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. That person will never be successful in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is about humility, about meekness, it's about obedience. Because we are in a situation where we are falling out of love with Krishna. We have been trying to be our own boss. So that attitude doesn't take us back to the spiritual world. To go back to the spiritual world, we should be ready to hear Guru as Srila Prabhupada, as translated in Bhagavad Gita 434. You have to approach Guru. You have to inquire submissively. Here's a humility part. Inquire submissively. You don't go challenge Guru. And I have seen people who have done that, at least overheard them. In the very next room, Guru says one thing, they say another thing. Say one thing, say another thing. This is to my Guru Maharaj and my god sister talking, and Guru was trying to give her instructions on what to do, but she was fighting the whole way. And in the end, well, you can guess what happened to her. She's no longer a devotee. She fell down. And this is what happens. So we have to be careful what so-called American lifestyle is and what it takes to be a devotee. American lifestyle says freedom, but freedom means to do whatever you want, when you want. And devotional life says you obey the spiritual master and you obey Guru, not only Guru, but Guru's god brothers and god sisters You take them to be at the same level as your spiritual master, hear them, serve them, and relate nicely to them all of the time. That is very important in our lives. And if we don't do that, then there's going to be an issue. How are we going to survive in Krishna consciousness? Our Krishna consciousness is going to go south. That is going to go down. The other thing that's important is the embassy has been given to us. What embassy? We call it the temple. The temple is the embassy of the spiritual world. We are not in the spiritual world, but it is the closest to being in the spiritual world in terms of the things that happens there. So it is important for us to take services in the temple seriously. If you've been around for a few weeks, you should have, I didn't say months, years, a few weeks, you should have service that you do. You should definitely be involved in doing service in the temple. You can definitely serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead at home, but that is a concession because your home is not an embassy. You're going to try to make your home a temple, that may be, but your home is not an embassy and it will never be an embassy. The embassy is a temple. So the service there, everything, if you've been to regular embassies, you will know. You go to that embassy, and one of the things that's obvious there is those who work there are from that country that embassy is representing. And they speak that language there too. So the language of Krishna consciousness is what's in the temple. Therefore, the temple is the main place where service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is taken far more seriously. Service at home is okay, but that's a concession. Many people who have deities at home do not serve them at the level of intensity that the deities in the temple are served. This is a fact. So that's why it's a concession to be serving at home. But never let Maya tell you, oh, I'm serving at home. The deities are the same in my house as was in the temple. Therefore, if I don't come to the temple so much, it's okay. There's activities here, and there's activities the next day, Saturday, Sunday. So then I come for the special activity on Saturday and Sunday. Well, I've come once, therefore I don't have to come again. You're dead, man. You really, I have to put it directly. You're dead. Literally dead. Maya is just taking your intelligence away. Just here's the argument. You go to the spiritual world, you see Krishna one day, the next day you're not going to see Krishna. Is that how you're going to live? I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence. You see Krishna one day, but not everybody in the spiritual world sees, they want to see him all of the day. The gopis have been blaming Lord Brahma that he's giving them eyebrows. The eyelids, that when they just blink, that time that they're blinking, they can't see Krishna, even though it's for a short while. So you cannot talk about seeing one day and another day, but it happens. And that's why we have to be careful. Radhanath Swami has said this over and over and over again, trying to get to have the devotees understand how strong Maya is. Maya is very strong. Maya is very strong. But Maya comes after our minds, trying to change us from living what we're supposed to live in Krishna consciousness to living something that's just a compromise. And we think, and then he says we're okay with a compromise. But we're actually dying spiritually. So we should never ever think that serving the Lord in some level of convenience, that's the way it is. No. Tripapa says the price for serving the Lord is greediness. Greediness to serve. That is the price. Enthusiasm and greediness to serve. So wherever you go, even if you go to a different temple from where you normally go to, see the temple is already there. If you have time, it says, I'm visiting, please give me some service. And whatever service they give you, do it. because then you're thinking about Krishna the whole time. So that's the problem. Maya makes us think that we are independent. But this text is telling us about the interdependence. And the supreme soul, the super soul, is the one that's independent. We are dependent on the senses and the demigods that control the senses. That's our situation. So sometimes we think we're independent. We can just chart our own lives at any time. And when we get some wealth, then we consider it success. Well, now listen. Chaitanya Charitamrita Anchalila, chapter 6, text 197. The purport section actually goes through the whole purport. It's not very long. When a man is attached to material enjoyment, he is attached to many miserable conditions. But nevertheless, he accepts his position as one of happiness. When one is attached to material enjoyment. This is why we've been given the regulated principles, the 4 regulated principles. They are to move us away from material enjoyment. But when Sri Prabhupada says we attach to material enjoyment, we automatically attached to many miserable conditions. How? As soon as we get wealth, first we think we're happy. We're going to make even more money. Not realizing that the more money we get, the more anxiety there is. The more money that we make, the more our lifestyle becomes precarious, difficult. If you get known as a person with a lot of money, what happens? People who want money come after you. Thieves may try to steal it, or relatives may try to remind you about the relation that you have with them. And because you have that relation, they think they are entitled to some of what you have. And if you do not give it to them, they immediately become enemies. But I'm trying to be wealthy here, and look at what's happening. Already, family members are becoming enemies because you're supposed to share it with them. And then some of them may even dictate how much they should get. Listen to all of those divorces that have happened with people who are supposedly stars, movie stars. When they divorce the spouses, what happens? How many millions go from one place to one person to another? So, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that once a person gets material enjoyment, which comes from wealth, then many miserable conditions. But then we are accepting this position. Srila Prabhupada is a condition that is condemned, the position that's condemned. But we think that's happiness. That's why we give the example that we gave. Sense enjoyment is so strong for such a person, he can't give it up. Exactly as a worm in stew cannot give up the stew. This is fact. We may be in human bodies, but worms like to stay in stew, and they don't like to give up. So this was a fitting analogy. Example, let's see the Prabhupada gave. Although such a position is utterly miserable in the eyes of liberated souls, the materialistic enjoyer is greatly attached to it. And this is why we suffer. To the very end of our lives, when death is coming and the rich man sees that the wealth is about to be taken away, there are some who have been sick and they're dying because of the sickness, and they beg the doctor, can you do something to stretch my life a few more days? This has happened. This has happened. So this is not home for us. That's why we go to Yehi Samspasa Jaboga. The intelligent person is not interested in things that are temporary, beginning and end. They know that after some point it's going to be gone, so they don't take interest. They don't put their marbles in that kind of situation. And Krishna is saying, even though it's not possible to know fully Krishna, because he's unlimited, surrendering to him is necessary for our peace and our happiness. Aham sava sepavavo mata sava pavatati iti matva bhajanti mam Buddha Bhava Samanvita. He says he's the source of everything, material and spiritual. All things emanate from him. Therefore, the wise. It's come up again. Yehi Samspasa Jabuka also talks about the wise. And here, Aham Savasya Prabhupada again talks about the wise. So wisdom is to surrender and understand that everything material is temporary and we shouldn't be so attached to them. But what do? Use them to serve devotees, to serve Guru, and serve the deity. In fact, in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 9, the different things in service, it is mentioned there that when we come into the temple, you see some devotees do it. Many Indian body people are raised that way. They come, they bring something for the deity. Either they're going to come put cash in the hunde, the collection box, or they'll bring some boga and give to the deity. This is very good practice. It is actually recommended in the Nectar of Devotion. So we should do that. Cash or kind, bring to the Lord. Bring to the Lord. To bring kind, boga especially, that's used to cook for the deities, and the prasadam is given to everybody that comes. So we should hear more about the Supreme Personality of God. Here's the conclusion. One, it's not possible to know fully Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's unlimited, but surrendering to him is necessary for our peace and happiness. Second, we should hear more about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and immerse ourselves in Bhakti Yoga, loving devotional service to the Lord and his devotees. If we serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a deity only, but we ignore the devotees, we are Kanishta, third class. We're supposed to be second class at the very least. So never ignore service to the devotees. You're fortunate if you have regular service that you do for devotees. Not the deities only, for devotees. Regular service. And it's very easy to get that. How? When you're having prasadam and you talk to the devotees, hear what they're saying. And from what they're saying, most of the time, without they themselves meaning to do this, they will mention some things that they need. You listen very closely, and whatever they need, make sure that you can either advise on how to get it, or better yet, get it as a gift for them. If you have a regular service that you do for devotees, you're most fortunate. So try to find something that you can do on a regular basis for devotees. We don't serve Krishna alone and leave out devotees. That's what we're saying. If you leave out service to devotees, you're third class. So it's very important. Sometimes some people, I have so many things to do, and every now and then I come once a month or so to the temple to do one service, or maybe I'm on the schedule. That's why I come, which means if you're not on the schedule, you wouldn't be coming at all. And Maya would actually make you do that, not come. Then it's like, I come only in Janmashtami. Then now it's just once a year. And this is how we go down, 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 down. Because after once a year, you go to what? Zero. Don't come at all. So hear more about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a very important thing. Srila Prabhupada said the first thing we have to do is to hear. The most important thing to do is to chant. But the more we hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the better our chanting quality becomes. And the happier we become also. They go together. So hear more about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The more we hear, the more we get excited about what we're hearing about the Lord. And what the directions, if we practice that, then the regulated principles are not something we're going to struggle to obey. No meat eating, fish or eggs, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. We will get there and get there without much of an effort. But it takes hearing more. Hearing actually does open that door. The more we hear about the Lord, then how does it work? The Lord himself moves us, moves the mind away from sense gratification. The regulated principles are all sense gratification. Meat eating, sense gratification. Drinking or intoxication, sense gratification. Illicit sex, sense gratification. Gambling, they're all sense gratification. But if we hear about the Lord, then we put our minds in the transcendental realm. And now the material, along with the sense gratification, become less important. And this is how we get away from it. So people thinking that, devotees thinking that we have to struggle to obey the regulated principles. No, you have to hear more and more and more and serve more. And the regulated principles will be obeyed, no problem. No problem. Hear more. Srila Prabhupada was telling the devotees, you should hear at least 3 hours. Does that mean you sit down 3 hours and hear? Yes, you can. Or as you're doing other services, have something there that's playing a lecture that you're listening to. And that way, you can hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once you train yourself, we train ourselves that way, Bhakti Yoga will become quite easily manageable, and we become happy, including obeying the regulated principles. So, we should see sense enjoyment as sabotage towards going back to Godhead. We should strive to only satisfy the senses of the Lord. Consider serving devotees as a privilege. Serving devotees should be considered as a privilege because it makes Guru and Guranga happy with the person that does that. So consider serving devotees. There is a passage in the Bible that Jesus was being questioned. And in one of the questions, he answered, as long as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me. As long as you helped the least of these. What's the least of these? Well, in the overall hierarchy, we are at the bottom, devotees. There is the deity, there's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's his representative, Guru, and then there's us. So if you serve the least of these, that means you serve the devotees. You make Guru happy, and you make Lord Chaitanya happy. So here, what we're requesting is, yes, we have learned the interdependence of the three, Devic, Bhautic, and Atmic, three. The person with the senses, the one that controls the senses, and the use of the senses. That's there. But in our lives going forward, this year, which we just started, we haven't even done a week yet, make sense gratification, material sense gratification, come in our minds as sabotage towards going back to Godhead. It's not going to take us back to Godhead. So we should satisfy Krishna's senses and the devotees, serve them also. It's a great privilege. Hear more, hear more, hear more, and hear more and more and more about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you will find that controlling the senses, material senses, will be a lot easier. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, this is the time to unmute yourself. If you have questions, you have comments, please go ahead and unmute yourself and let's have a discussion. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Please step
We
on.
accept my humble obeisances.
Prabhupada.
Thank you for a very nice class, Prabhu.
This is
A
mercy.
lot of lot of reminders. Yeah, it's towards the end you are describing how it's uh, like a big problem, like understanding or experiencing that the more we are earning or that money is coming in, we will be more anxious. Um, it's difficult to really give it a thought till we hear it, and like you
That's
mentioned.
the part we tend not to think about it. That actually, the more wealth, the more anxiety. But it is true.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, till we hear, like you said, we need to hear more, so then like we'll get that understanding. That was really a nice point. That meaning I have also experienced that we hear more, we tend to like uh, give it a thought, like when we are not hearing. Because, like when we are not hearing, then we sometimes like think about, okay, this is like really, and many times we also go through situations, then we remember something we have heard in the past, so
Mm.
that really uh, you know gives us that thought. So yeah, thank you for those reminders.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna. But now we thank you actually for the comments that you've made. We're not beating down wealth, material wealth. When we use the wealth to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is to our advantage, big advantage. Mm-hmm. Then Krishna would even help us to get control of anxiety that could come from even our having this. So much protection Krishna will give us. But we have to be willing to use part of the money to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different Krishna conscious projects. That's what you use money for. And then you can save some for emergencies and save some for family. Mm. But use the bulk of it for Krishna conscious projects, support the temples. Mm. That is the best way to go about using money. Then you get a lot of credits, spiritual credits, just because you had the money and you used it the way you did. So that's the one thing, Other than that, it's trouble. It's trouble. If you want money for sense gratification, we're going to get into all kinds of trouble. And then we won't go home either. Go back to Godhead. But in the spiritual world, there's a lot of wealth. And it doesn't put anybody in anxiety. There's no comparison. The person that says that I'm the wealthiest person here on this planet is actually poor compared to what's available for one individual in the spiritual world. Brad Bhagavatamrita describes that. Mm-hmm. So we're not living a great life at all. We're not living a great life. We live in prison life. But we're trying to say, oh, it's okay. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. The situation at home is far, 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 far better. There's no comparison. So let's prepare to go home. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments? If not, then thank you all for coming on. Mm-hmm. We know that this country has more available than many other countries, but don't let that fool you. They don't compare at all to what's in the spiritual world waiting for us. They don't come even close what's here. And then they are all temporary also, where everything in the spiritual world is permanent. Hare Krishna. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Sira Prabhupada ki jai. Have a wonderful, wonderful Krishna conscious day. Hare Krishna.